Good day, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the PTSD Buddies podcast. I'm your host, Jamie McWhorter, and this is a special episode. This episode will be uploaded online on September the 11th. This was the 20th anniversary of 9/11, this coming September the 11th, and on this episode of the PTSD Buddies podcast, we talk about 9/11. We talked to Kayla in New York. Now, Kayla worked in the Twin Towers. She was on the 67th floor when the planes hit the Twin Towers on that tragic day. And Kayla not only worked there, but she had a team of people. And in this episode, she tells her incredible and heroic story of not only surviving and getting out of there, but leading people out. She talks some crazy stories here, people, about barely making it alive. So trigger warnings to anyone out there who might feel triggered by this. She goes in detail of what she went through. So stay tuned. This episode is a good one. Well, Kayla, I have to admit, Kayla, I've been excited for a few weeks now to hear your story, because, well, you gave me a brief description of the story, and well, I'm going to be posting this on September the 11th, and this is the 20th anniversary of September the 11th. So before we get into the story, what was life like for Kayla before 9/11?
Life was great. I had the job of a lifetime.
Yeah.
At the peak of my career, living Manhattan. I'm a huge Yankees fan. Going to Madison Square Garden for concerts, for the U.S. Open. I loved all of that.
Yeah.
I had a wonderful life, I got to say.
And New York's beautiful,
isn't it? It's a little crazy. I'm originally from New Orleans, and very laid back in the South. So when I went to New York, it was a huge difference. But there's so much diversity and so much to do. I love that.
Yeah. What did you do?
I was a director of public affairs for the Port Authority, New York and New Jersey.
Wow.
The Port Authority built the World Trade Center. They also were responsible for the major airports, JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, some smaller airports, and then they ran the bridges and the tunnels between New York and New Jersey. So it was a little diversity of transportation facilities.
Yeah, you sound like an important person.
I'm just a humble public servant.
Yeah. Were you what were you like though? Like were you a people person?
I'm still a people person.
Still a people person?
I have a great sense of humor, at least I try, no matter what. I think that's so important. Sometimes we take each other too seriously. So I've always been sort of a practical joker. I may not be that, but I do have a dry sense of humor.
Yeah.
So that keeps me going.
Yeah. And that's big to a lot of people.
I call it medicine, good medicine.
100%. I couldn't agree with you more. Laughter is a medicine. And I do public speaking on stage, and I always try to make the people laugh because I agree. It's laughter is medicine.
Well, a lot of people, they don't know how to take it. You were in this war or whatever, or I was in that. They don't know how to react. So to be able to take out that humor to sort of get them just to relax a little bit, we're not fragile people sitting in the corner and with the fetal pain. That stigma of PTSD still exists, sadly.
Yeah.
As you know.
Yes. Yeah. Did you enjoy going to work?
I did. It was sort of a hop and a skip onto the train, take it down to Fulton Street, and then stride with that New York swagger across the plaza, and then into the building, and then to my office.
Yeah. What was it like in that building?
it was like being at the UN. Actually, there were people, so many people from so many backgrounds, and some of the memories I had. One time I was actually, shall we say, I had too much to drink, and I was hungover. The next morning I went to the World Trade Center, and when there were high winds, it
Yeah.
would rock a little bit. Oh,
No way.
that was bad. That was bad. But
Oh,
it was a world within a world.
yeah.
And even watching snowstorms. I had a view of the Statue of Liberty from my office, and to see the snow on the Statue of Liberty. Of course, I used to keep my shades down somewhat in the office because kind of the bright light bothered me. And I'd have a friend come in. She'd open the shade, said, "Kayla, enjoy this." And one of my mentors said, "Kayla, don't get used to this. This is a way station in life." So, but it was a wonderful life. I met a lot of good people who I'm still in touch with.
Amazing. You really paint a picture, Kayla. It sounds like a dream.
It was. And who would think a little Cajun from New Orleans would be, you know, thriving in New York City?
Well,
Couldn't have,
that's
couldn't have envisioned that.
no. Well, I like to think that was one of the amazing things about the towers was you never knew who was going to come in through that door. I mean, you never knew what part of the world they were coming from. It was like an airport,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly. Even to see all the flags,
Yeah.
and it just I got the chills just seeing that. You felt like you were part of sort of the universe rather than just a small part of a state.
Yeah, I felt something like that in Afghanistan when I served because I served alongside of. I'm a Canadian, but I served alongside of Americans, the British, Australia, and you know what? Over there, when I served overseas, it wasn't about where you were from. It wasn't about race. It was about life, and I love that.
And boy, hasn't the world changed, right?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't go buy a pack of crayons and buy all blue. I love a variety, so I don't know what's going on there. That's just
Me
me,
too.
though.
No, that's me too. That's me too. I think we had such an opportunity to bring the world together,
Yeah.
and the exact opposite happened.
No. Sorry,
Is that?
my dogs
I,
are here, so you might hear them bark from time to time.
I thought maybe it was your wife. Oh,
No,
did I
no.
say that?
My wife wanted to join, but there's
Oh,
something going on with the Military Family Resource Center
no.
for kids. So my wife took my son there, and I'm here with the dogs. So you might hear my dog bark from time to time.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not therapy dogs; they're just dogs. But
Dogs.
I love them to death. I'm an animal person.
Me too.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to trigger you, Kayla, but what could you tell us about the day?
Um, September 11th. It was a Tuesday. Actually, the day before, I was with my boss, Neil Levin. He was the executive director of the Port Authority. We were at JFK with an editorial board writer from the New York Times. His name was Andreas Martin. And we were talking about redeveloping what was uh, what was the TWA um, building. And I don't know if you saw the movie Catch Me If You Can.
I did.
It's an architectural marvel, but it doesn't serve any practical application in terms of moving tourists in and out. So the Port Authority was looking at turning it into a conference center. So we were having a walk to kind of show what we wanted to do with the building. So after that, my boss gives me a ride back into Manhattan, drops me off at my apartment, and said, "What are you going to do?" Maybe I'll just watch TV or go to the gym. He said, "Go to the gym." And I was in peak shape at that time. I go like 4 times a week. That was the last conversation I had with my boss. Um, yeah, he was on the 107th floor, windows in the world, meeting with some folks. And, when the building hit, he was so high, he didn't have a chance. So that morning, the sky was an incredible color blue. It wasn't powder blue. It wasn't dark blue. It was sort of like my eyes, but you can't tell from here. Beautiful blue. Think of blue marbles.
Okay.
And I went to vote in the primary. I happened to see Rudy Giuliani and soon to be mayor Mike Bloomberg. Excuse me a second. My computer keeps saying it's almost time to restart. Okay, we're good now. So I saw him at the polling place. And I hopped on the train, got off at Fulton Street. Part of my pattern was getting a venti mocha at Starbucks right as I entered the plaza. Went to work. I got there probably about 11 o'clock. I had a 9 o'clock meeting scheduled with my boss, Neil Levin, and some outside vendors to talk about redevelopment of the website to really take it to 3D. We had seen some Goldman Sachs and other companies who had state of the art. And so we were looking at that, or that was what we were supposed to do.
All right.
So I get to my desk, 8:15, 8:20, just prepping. And I guess it was like 8:45, 8:46. Something happened. The building went forward about 10 feet, but then it swayed back. That was the way the buildings were designed. And I thought it was a little unusual. I'm thinking, well, maybe a small plane veered off course. And so I tried to call my boss. They said he was at Windows of the World, which he never was at that time. Okay. So the irony. So I called his wife. She said, try him on his BlackBerry. Couldn't get him. So I called the governor of New York's office, tried to get to the press office. I said, something has happened. I'm not sure what it is. And then all of a sudden I looked outside and you could see like debris, as if someone from all the desks above us on the different floors were just cleaning out papers and stuff like that. And by that time there were shards of glass. And so I sent my staff who were there. We had staggered shifts. I said, go to the Marriott. The Marriott was on the 16-acre site. That's where the 1993 bombing, that's where they had set up a communication, you know the term, JIC, for Joint Information Center. So I'd set staff there. I told senior staff I was going to set up a communication center there. And finally, somebody comes upstairs and tells me, Kayla, your life is in danger. You have to evacuate now. And again, still the mindset, it's a small plane. So I walked the floor to make sure no one was else on the floor. And then the phone rang. I picked the phone up. It was some aide to Tom Brokaw in NBC News. They said, oh, I'm with Tom Brokaw's office. We'd like to go live.
Yeah.
I said, you don't understand. We're evacuating. They said, you don't understand. This is from Mr. Brokaw. So then I slammed the phone down. So I get into the stairwell, and we had these Blackberries with the little keyboards. So I was able to use that. The phones weren't working, so it was a gift. So I texted my staff, hey, are you at the Marriott? Is everything set up? Turns out they were only 10 flights ahead of me, even though I'd sent them like half an hour sooner. So I was on the 68th floor, so they were on the 58th floor.
Wow.
So meanwhile, there's a guy on my staff. He's part-time with the Coast Guard. He calls me, hey, Chief. He said, you want me to come in? I said, no, that's all right. I said, it's probably a small plane. So going down very orally. And then a friend of mine sends me an AP story that says terrorists attacked the World Trade Center. I'm thinking, well, I can't have anybody panic. Then I run into a friend of mine, Patty Clark, who's in one of these famous photos by Reuters. And I said, I'm going to show you something, but please don't react. I show it to her. We looked at each other. Said, let's get this line moving. It was very early, I got to say, because I guess I wasn't there for the 1993 bombing, but they did a lot of drilling after that. And even when I was there, they did a lot of drilling, practicing. And so after the 1993 bombing, under the lessons learned, they put this thick tape up and down the stairwell, so it glowed in the dark. So all you had to do was stay on the line. And as the firemen went up with their oxygen tanks and the axes, and the policemen came down with people who had been injured, all we had to do was move aside until they went down. So we get down to about the sixth floor, and all of a sudden, it's like the world shook. The South Tower had come down. We didn't even know it was a hit, but something by that magnitude, we knew it must have been the South Tower. And so some of us were kind of thrown off the platform. The
Holy
building, the building twisted,
whoa.
so it blocked the stairwell, so we couldn't get out. Meanwhile, the air conditioner chiller, they had these huge pipes of water that was used to cool the building. Well, the
Right.
pipes burst when the building twisted. And so you got this flood of water coming down. And as you know, you never know how you're going to respond to circumstances until you're there. That was the moment I thought that was it. But interesting enough, you learn something about yourself. I was very calm.
Really, hey?
Yeah, I wasn't, I'm still not the most religious person in the world. I mean, I have a relationship with God, it's more spiritual, but that moment, okay, I was all right. Then out of nowhere, we hear this voice, come up, come up. Turns out to be Port Authority police officer David Lim. Out of nowhere, he showed up. Since the Port Authority had built the World Trade Center, the police and the World Trade Center staff, they knew the building inside out. So with no more options, we decided to go up a flight of stairs, and he guided us through this maze. I mean, there was glass everywhere, there was soot, there were wires. So we went to another stairwell. Again, in that stairwell, like the other one, these huge pipes burst and the water was coming down like the Grand Rapids.
Oh my God.
And so they were letting us in the stairwell go through a door to get out, two at a time. But something happened. We lost the people in front of us. But I thought we were getting out. What I thought was the sky, it was white. So we stepped in there, and it was a little scary because there didn't seem to be any exits. And it was like fresh fallen snow from the ceiling to all the walls. And then I realized we were at the West Side Highway and Vesey Street, in the lobby, essentially.
Yeah.
But we didn't know how to get out. We didn't see a door. Because everything, like I said, I guess it was because of so many things getting pulverized.
Yeah.
So the people I was with said, they started to scream. I said, don't scream because some of the stuff is still coming down. I said, let's look for footprints. Well, we looked for footprints, no footprints. I said, now it's time to scream. So we started screaming. All of a sudden, we saw this light. This is sounding biblical, huh? We saw a light, and then we heard somebody on a bullhorn saying, if you can see this light, follow the light. Okay, that was the only option. So we did that. We came out on the side of the building, and there was an overhang of the building where we came out. And I don't know what it's like to have been in Iraq and Afghanistan to see the death and destruction everywhere. So just trying to focus, getting just getting out there. So we go along the side of the building. We come to this staircase, which is now known as the survivor's staircase. It's 30 tons of concrete. Without that staircase, we would have been trapped on the plaza level.
Right.
So we go down these stairs, had my little skirt on and my little pumps. I'm starting to breathe when we get this church in Vesey. I'm breathing. Okay, we made it. And all of a sudden the cop says, run. Spent 45 minutes in the building. Run, really? I turned around. Oh my goodness. It was like those Lethal Weapon movies with Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
It was a huge, you could see the tower collapsing in this huge plume of black, engulfing lower Manhattan. So from there, I ran 16 blocks. Now, New York blocks are not easy blocks, but that's probably the fastest I've run in my life. from Church and Vesey all the way to the Holland Tunnel. And
Wow.
as this plume is stretching out,
Yeah.
some of us dove under the car to avoid it. And so we got up after it, and then some of the merchants around giving us water. And then I'm trying to think, what are we going to do next? Because my job was to deal with the news media and elected officials. So I texted my staff. I said, we're going to New Jersey, just over the Hudson on the other side, or our police headquarters. So I texted everybody, meet me there, meet me there. It turns out, though, those people I'd sent to the Marriott, the senior staff, the building, one of the ceilings on the floor there and collapsed and fell all over them.
Oh my
They were
goodness.
okay, but by the time I saw them come over, covered in soot, I didn't even recognize them.
Right.
That's some guilt I still carry. So since the Holland Tunnel was a Port Authority facility, I texted everybody, I said, going to New Jersey. I flagged down Port Authority police officers at the entrance to the tunnel and just hopped in. So we went to our headquarters. It's called the Port Authority Transportation Center. It's also known as Patsy. And so we went in there. I was like, okay, where is Neil Levin, my boss? You're hoping against hope. Nothing. Nobody knew. All right, where's Fred Marone, the superintendent of police? Nobody heard a word. And then I kept asking down the chain in the police department. 33 of the leadership had been wiped out trying to get to my boss, who was at Windows in the World.
My goodness, Jesus.
So the chief operating officer's name was Ernesto Butcher. He was one of those ones I kind of inadvertently sent to his death, but he made it. And we sat down for a moment trying to figure out what we were going to do. It was determined that that facility was too close to the Holland Tunnel because we didn't know whether or not there would be more attacks. And so we moved within the town, but a different facility that wasn't close to the Holland Tunnel or the Lincoln Tunnel. So that's where we operated. First thing my boss says is, Kayla, I need your help. Okay, what do you need? We have to find out who is dead and who is alive.
Holy
The
shit.
Human Resources Department hadn't gotten there yet. So I'm trying to think, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? Meanwhile, I still haven't talked to my family, so they're thinking I'm dead. So I called a friend who was in another department. I didn't know if she was in the building or what. So I called her at home, and that moment when somebody picks up the phone, or you're waiting for somebody to pick up the phone. I said, Norma, I need your help. Turns out she was on the train from New Jersey into the World Trade Center. She was on the last train in that the head of the PATH department, Port Authority Transportation Center, she was on the last train that they stopped. So what a blessing. And she was one of these detail people, I'm more of a macro person. She's micro. So she came in, and then we decided to just use a spreadsheet. Yes, all the departments had these chains of, you call this one, you call this one, but it was too early. And so from a process point of view, we set up the Excel spreadsheet. As you can imagine, the web page was history. And so we set up a white page, and we set up 2 phone numbers. Port Authority staff needing information on where to report, call this number. So as they would call in, we do a little cheer, they go in the Excel. The other line we set up was for family members who haven't heard from their loved ones, call this number. So that was on the other side. And that was the beginning. We went from rescue to recovery to restoring the PATH service between New York and New Jersey. We went to the 9/11 Commission hearings, and then the rebuild. It was one thing after the other. I got public information officers from the governor's office of New York and New Jersey. We knew we had to have communication around the clock for months. And we were there for 8 months answering calls. And I made sure that my staff had at least a day off. uh, uh, that was a gift, right? Um, we just had so many volume of calls. I don't think I took a day off. Took maybe 8 months. My parents came to see me one night for dinner, but that was it. I was living in Manhattan. By the time I got there at 2 a.m. on September 12th, there were people standing outside the building. Hey, hey, we wanted to know if you were alive. We were hoping you were alive. But that smell of death, you could smell it all the way on the other side of Manhattan. And that night I was too scared to sleep in my own bed. That sounds kind of ridiculous. I guess it's there were messages on my answer machine, people trying to find out where I was. And so I guess listening to that and what had happened that day, I slept on the sofa. I thought Manhattan was under siege, the entire island of Manhattan.
Yeah.
But then when I woke up, turns out the Millennium Hotel, um, it was a big lightning storm. And that's what I was hearing. So, okay. I wasn't exactly hallucinating, but after a few days, we had staff meetings at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m. at night, senior staff meetings. And so just commuting back and forth, um, it was very stressful. And so I moved into a hotel right around the corner so I could operate. And we just worked and worked and worked. There were 72 Port Authority police and civilians who died. I think I went to 33 funerals, um, and worked. And the next thing was the 9/11 commission hearings. That they were brutal because nobody could anticipate. It was inconceivable that somebody would take a commercial airliner and use it as a tool to ram into a building to just kill people.
Yeah.
Um, but at the hearings, understandably so, grieving parents, the anger, they would express themselves through that because they were so upset, and they bring pictures of their son and daughter, say, Port Authority, they point at us and say, you killed my son, you killed my daughter. That was kind of hard to deal with.
And
Um,
it was.
and so I was there until 2006. I got a job opportunity in Florida working in the Everglades. It's a warmer climate. And that's the only reason I left. Um, but all those years later, I didn't know what PTSD was. I just thought I had a little anxiety. I had moved to Florida, had another great job, but then a new governor comes in, the economy's starting to tank. And so you have to cut $180 million from my agency. So first thing that goes is marketing and PR. So that was part of it. And the second part, my mother was just diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. This was 2011. In 2012, I got my first DUI in Florida. Again, I thought I was just depressed because I was part of workforce manager reduction, as they called it.
Yeah.
Um, and just my mom, the condition she was in. So I spent a lot of time going between Florida and Georgia. And I used all my savings, and I didn't have anything left. I finally found a job in 2016. It was sort of a temporary job to revamp a website. The job was created for that. When I finished, it was eliminated. Then my mother died. So I moved to Georgia in 2000, I think the end of 2016. January 2000, September 17. I'm sorry, January 17th, 2017. Um, DUI number 2. And it was that time in this program, a very progressive program in the state of Georgia, if you can believe it. It's an accountability court program, so you got to go to court. There are financial penalties. You can be drug tested anywhere from 1 to 7 days a week. But the innovative portion that really saved my life was they have a treatment component. That's where I got the PTSD diagnosis.
Right.
And I was in this program for almost 3 years, and it was group group treatment, individual treatment with a counselor, And then finally, I got the PTSD diagnosis from a psychiatrist, and that was a moment. That was a moment that changed my life. I just wish, that saying, if was a skiff, we could take a ride.
Mhm.
The thought of PTSD never ever crossed my mind. I think I was telling you before. The only time I've seen PTSD in something was just on TV. Unless you're in war, unless you're a first responder, unless it's domestic violence. I think I'm a little bit intelligent. So why I didn't put that together, I have no idea. But what I learned was PTSD fuels the alcohol, and the alcohol fuels the PTSD.
Right.
I have 4 years, and 5 months later, I'm sober, I'm active. I help sponsor people, I help coach people. But that really saved my life. Um, I don't know what it was like for you. I actually tried to go to a veterans group to see if they would let me sit in on meetings, because I wanted to know, what does it look like to you? Because some of the other people in the program, pain is pain is pain, trauma is trauma is trauma. But I thought PTSD might be a little different. So I met the head of the veterans group, and he said, well, I said, well, what does PTSD look like to you? And he's kind of old school. And nothing. I just see a lady once a month, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't want that. He wanted me to start a group, a women's group. I wasn't ready to do that. And so I didn't really get the answers. So when I realized the anxiety for me was off the charts, to sit down in a car, for more than 5 miles, I would have a very, very hard time, always tapping my feet. To this day, if a giant truck is in my neighborhood or where I'm standing, it hits a pothole, the reverberation, that still affects me.
I bet it does. I
And
bet
I,
anything that reminds you of that. I mean, you think about it, what you went through. Serious, serious trauma you went through. Uh, and it doesn't matter how long ago it was, Kayla. That's crazy trauma. The story you told me, I don't even know if I took a breath when when you were telling it. Um, so yeah, I imagine any. I imagine your symptoms are a lot like mine, being a veteran. I mean, I know myself. I can say this: it doesn't matter if you're a veteran, first responder. Anybody can get PTSD. Anyone who goes through trauma, it changes them a little bit. Even if it's a little bit, it changes them. And so, yeah, I imagine a loud bang could probably sound a little bit like the loud bang that you heard when things went down in the trade centers. So, when I listen to you talk, Kayla, I don't know if anyone's ever said this to you, but I got to swear too, you're a fucking hero, lady. Uh,
Thank you. I
uh,
don't feel that way. And I think what worked for me, I don't know if it's what worked for you. I was in the zone, the
yeah,
work mode. And that was a blessing at that time. And what I realized all these years later, I was fine as long as I was doing, back at my fast pace. But when I was laid off, that's when all the stuff came to the top. I didn't know it at the time. And so all those things I had to learn. First of all, medication, even the flashback. To me, a flashback sometimes occurs, not very often, is when I'm driving and it feels like another car is getting ready to hit me, and then it's like a flash of light, and that's it. Occasionally, night tremors. I used to have them more regularly. I've tried to slow everything down. One of the things that's helped me, I don't know if you tried it, obviously, the medication, my doctor and therapist, they all work, but I needed something else, especially since I wasn't from Georgia. And my World Trade Center case manager said, hey, you ever tried equine therapy? I'm like, huh?
mm-hmm.
I said, okay, okay. I fell off a horse as a 9-year-old. So I'm thinking I'm going to go there, pet the horse, and live happily ever after. So I get there. I figure, okay, let me try it. But then I realized it has nothing to do with riding horses. The first time I went there, and the lady, it's Special Equestrians in Milton, Georgia, what a heart she has. She says everybody who goes there is a little damaged. And There's something that's magical about horses. They have a sixth sense. Everything is on their terms, unlike dogs. But they can sense something. The first time I was there, this big old mare, her name was Lily, huge, a mare with a little diva mare, shall we say. She comes up to me. You know, I'm leery of horses because of my falling off as a child. She comes up to me, puts her head right on my shoulder, and it's like all that I was carrying on my shoulder, like all that energy, I could feel it like being released into the air. And
Nice.
just so you know, I am not a granola. I don't believe in rebirth. You know, some of those, I don't, for me, stones and stuff like that, that's not for me. So if it sounds a little bit out there, but it works. I still go there every weekend, and you see the hierarchy with, I spent a lot of time with the minis, and you see there's one of them, his name was Sammy. He was the top of the heap. And about 3 years ago, his friend died. So he went from being number one to all the way at the bottom because he wasn't able to get over that. Until about a month ago, he went from top dog to being at the bottom of the chain, even below a little foal named Beansprout. And he's, guess what? He's risen again.
Oh yeah.
He is the boss. So you see the metaphors between humans and horses. I just love being there because I call it Peaceville. It's
Yep.
where I go where everything stops. And, I don't know about you. I've always worked at a fast pace, but when you're in the PTSD, you go 100 miles an hour. I had some therapy. They try to say, "Oh, why don't you do a little coloring?" Are you kidding me? I'm 58 years old. You're going to give me a coloring book? I don't think so. And I understood what that meant. It was a way to focus and to slow down the brain.
Yep.
But I
Slow
started
down.
taking photos of the farm, and I do little videos and stuff like that. All of that has really been helpful. And I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because I'm one of the so-called lucky ones. My AA sponsor says, "Kayla, there were no lucky people on that day." But um, there are a lot of people who weren't first responders. They weren't military. All they did was go to their job that day. Civilians. A lot of them are traumatized. None of them have received help, except there's a few who got help, but a lot of them didn't know you could register for certain things. You know, drug addicts and drinking and having a hard time struggling, and they've been shit on. The government has totally forgotten them, and so one of the reasons I'm not going to this year to the 20th anniversary, just so you know, I've been back, and it's kind of cool though. Actually, Robert De Niro tells my story at the museum, but those phony politicians. Okay, you want to talk about pulling out of Afghanistan? All these never forget. Um, why did Jon Stewart have to go and shame the Congress to fund the first responders who are getting lung cancer?
Yeah, that was some
Uh,
speech, hey?
yeah, just struggle. They're going to all be there. I want to speak. I want to be in the money photo, all this stuff. And it's sad. Even when they were fighting over Congress, you had Congress people from other states saying, well, we don't want to give funding because it's a New York problem. A New York problem? That's why you've been saying never forget all these years. So I'm going to be hanging with my friends. Actually, every September 11th that I'm not in New York, we do a Zoom call, about 20 of us. And
Oh,
it's not to mourn or anything like that. It's kind of to just talk about some of the funny moments and how we work together, the things we did for comic relief. Friend of mine lost a blackberry in the toilet in the middle of all this stuff,
yeah.
those types of things. And so I just hope to shine a little light on those who need help and who've been forgotten.
Well, my God, I can't get over the story you tell. I can't get over how you went through this and you were still able to focus and lead people places. And then once you got out, you got on a computer and got on Excel
Yeah.
How in the Jesus were you able to focus? That's why I said earlier, you're a hero.
Well, how have you been able to focus?
Well, I
We
mean,
do what need to get done, right?
yeah, I hear you. You don't know what you can do until you're put in that moment.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I had a good people that I worked with too. I mean, in some ways, except for all the mental, just performing. We had, I gotta say, during that whole thing, no member of the Port Authority, and there were like 3,000 employees, nobody went without a paycheck because of these business continuity plans. Um, so much drilling and in our business resumption plans. We had everything on a flash drive. So we could go to your house and operate there because we were so well prepared.
Wow.
Uh, so that part was easy. And it was frankly a deflection, but I'm grateful.
More PTSD Buddies podcasts after a word from our sponsors. We are sponsored by the Tema Foundation. The Tema Foundation is a great foundation in Canada that helps first responders, military, frontline workers, the whole community deal with mental illness. The Tema Foundation strives to make mental health healthier for our first responders and frontline worker community. They've worked to create a free, I say again, a free online educational series that can help you cope with the daily stress, anxiety, and depression your career may bring you. PPE for Your Mind is a helpful collection of videos, ebooks, audiobooks, and much more. It's meant to help first responders, frontline workers, healthcare professionals, public safety personnel, military, and the important people in our lives. To all those who work to keep us healthy and safe, the Tema Foundation hopes PPE for Your Mind will help build your resilience as you continue to fight for the benefits of us all. Find PPE for Your Mind free along with other educational materials at www.tema.foundation. That's www.tema.foundation. You can make sure to follow the Tema Foundation also on all the social media just to stay in the loop on all the things they got coming up, because they in the past have run galas and everything. So you really want to keep up on the Tema Foundation. They're doing a lot for Canada. And let me just add in, living in Newfoundland, I am the Newfoundland ambassador for the Tema Foundation. So check them out, the Tema Foundation. They are there to help. PTSD Buddies podcast is proud to be sponsored by Spartan Wellness. Spartan Wellness is a Canadian organization, and I'm proud to say that I'm a member of Spartan Wellness. I use medical cannabis, and one of the things that Spartan Wellness does is help people, Canadians, get medical cannabis if they need it. You don't need to be just a veteran or a member of the RCMP. They'll help anybody get medical cannabis. Now, that's not the only thing they do. As a veteran, they also will help veterans deal with Veterans Affairs. Veterans Affairs can sometimes get a little confusing with different. Now, this is not against Veterans Affairs themselves. They're a great organization, but sometimes veterans can get a little confused with filling out forms and everything, and Spartan Wellness is there to assist with that. They also assist with insurance and rehab platforms. They can help assist you with Veterans Affairs and setting up with your Blue Cross provider. Not only do they help you with getting your medical cannabis prescription, they'll help you pick out the right licensed producer for you, because Spartan Wellness works with all the medical cannabis producers out there, and they can help you pick the right one for you. They also provide lots of medical cannabis education. So maybe you're not sure if medical cannabis is right for you. They're here to provide all the education you need and answer any questions you have. And they'll even help you get all registered with that licensed producer once you choose it. Okay? So check out Spartan Wellness at spartanwellness.ca. They are a great team. Cheers. Yeah. And you all went back to work after one day off, eh?
That's it.
It
Yeah.
had been so difficult going back to work, though.
Well, and not being able to sleep. I was at that hotel.
Yeah.
The antennas were gone.
Yeah.
So there was no TV. So what am I going to do? Up at 1 o'clock in the morning, I finally got some kind of maybe 6 weeks after I saw a therapist. I got some kind of medication, but I don't remember any conversations I had with a therapist. Um, it was so many weeks and weeks after. One of the first guys who actually helped me a few days later is a rabbi. He said, Kayla, I want to talk to you. Said, we need to talk about what you went through. I'm here to support you. I said, well, you don't understand. I'm a Catholic. How are you going to help me? Ah, um, but that's as close to God as I could get at that moment, you know.
Yeah. Well,
So
I've said it before. You can't ask people questions so soon after trauma. You know, I mean, when I got back from Afghanistan, the first thing we did when we got in Canada was have 3 days work. Right? It wasn't go home, you know,
right,
and chill. We gotta we gotta do all the paperwork now that you're home. And one of the things was everyone had to go visit a head doctor, and they would ask them, you know, how are you doing? Are you doing all right? Are you sleeping? And they would ask the soldier questions like this. Now, as a soldier, we're going to tell that doctor whatever the frig he wants to hear. We haven't seen our fucking family in
yeah,
6 months to a year. So whatever you want to hear, doc, is what we're going to
that's
tell
it.
you
Bye.
to get us at the door.
Bye, Felicia.
But you,
Right?
yeah, but I've that's one thing I've said. You got to give people time to process themselves before you can go and ask them, "Hey, are you okay?" They don't really know yet. They're still in shock. They're still in go 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 mode. It's like you said
Exactly.
earlier. You need to slow down. A lot of times when you go through trauma, we all run on one gear on this certain gear, but when we go through trauma, it knocks us up into another gear. Now we're not even thinking no more. Now everything that faces us, we just react. You don't get a process no more. We just react. That's why we thought you said something else when you said this, and we snapped and told you off. You know, we don't think no more. We are just reacting because we were put in that position. We flicked on the switch, and now we can't flick it back off. It's on. We got to
I,
process through everything before we can flick it back off again. And sometimes that takes a lifetime.
I know somebody who is working on getting her, it might be master's in social work or it's a licensed professional counselor.
Okay.
So she's writing all those papers and she says to me, hey, in my class, they're saying the next time something like this happens on American soil, do you think it would be beneficial to send in thousands of therapists and mental health workers? I said, I guess so. But people like us, who else is going to run the airports and all that other stuff? Who's going to sit say, no, I'm leaving my job and somebody else has to take care? I don't think so. Maybe for a lot of people who in different functions, but I wouldn't have stepped away. Maybe if I had lost, God forbid, a limb or something, or brain damage, obviously, but nothing was keeping me away from that job. And you probably understand it.
Yeah. Well, it's like you start when we started this here episode, you talked about life before 9/11 and how much you love the view of your office and you got your Starbucks. That was part of your routine. I know I love my Starbucks Frappuccino, okay?
Yeah, mine was a venti mocha.
Yeah, my wife loves it. The Venti, what was it? Chocolate chip
Oh
Frappuccino.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's good.
She loves that stuff. Yeah, but you talked about you were you were in such an important position. You were seeing so many different people. You were seeing the beauty of of different nationalities. I mean, your story should be a movie, right? But yeah, I
Yeah.
can see it. I mean, you painted such an amazing picture, right? So
Hmm.
I can understand why you
And
feel what you do.
I struggled. I don't know about you, but I think of the veterans. After I had PTSD, after I had my first DUI, I still didn't know I had PTSD. But I guess I always racked my brain to see what else I could have done, earlier. You can't go back, but I still ask myself those questions. Why didn't I see the signs? What else could I have done? And
You can't do that to yourself, Kayla. That's the one thing I think all people with PTSD, we almost all have in common, is our brain is our enemy. Um, I tell people all the time, I think group therapy is important. Group therapy or animal therapy. Um, Anything that keeps you from being alone. I think being alone with a mental illness, with PTSD, is the worst because you start sitting there and you start thinking about shit. You can't help it. You think about shit. Why didn't I do this? Why didn't I do that? You got, we all have to try not to do that. And that's why I tell people to be around horses, be around the animals. For some reason, the animals will take that bad energy right out of you, or be around good people, friends who are going to talk to you and talk you out of that, right?
hmm
You can
that's
talk,
what
you can
my
think all you want, Kayla, about what you should have done and what you could have done. And all I heard about your story was you saved lives. You can look at it however you want. You saved lives because a lot of people would have froze. You got that fight and flight, right? That people say there's, I like to
yep,
throw in the third one, fight, flight, and freeze. Because some
yep,
people just freeze. Now, you didn't hide under a table and freeze. You didn't stand there. You didn't even just try to save yourself. You led people out of there. And then you got down to XL to make sure people were still alive. Like, holy fuck. Yes, I'm swearing. You're a hero, right?
yeah,
Robert De Niro, read your story for Jesus' sake. I love Robert De
yeah.
Niro.
He did a lot for the trade center, but one of the ways I think the government failed, like I said, I'm one of those so-called lucky ones, is when I lost everything. When I was at my lowest, no job, no nothing, no income, zero, all my savings gone.
Yep.
The government did nothing for me. And I'm not a person who says, give me handouts. I'm always one of these self reliant people, but they did nothing. And I get angry. My doctor says, hey, you couldn't control what the terrorists did, but still, we don't take care of our people in this country. And just FYI, a lot of people think if you just happen to be in a trade center that day, that somehow millions of dollars were showered upon you. That's not true. And that's not something I would seek.
Shh.
But unless you have lung cancer, which you'd have to prove, unless you were a family member, those were the exceptions. But there are a lot of people whose lives went to shit, no fault of their own. They just went to work that day and their lives are wrecked.
Yep. Yep.
So how did you become an activist?
Well, for me, it started because of PTSD buddies. I wrote a book about my tour in Afghanistan, and an organization called the Tema Foundation asked me to speak on stage about it. And I said, no way, man. And my wife's like, why not? You wrote a book about it. Your story's out there. And the reason why I wrote the book, I wish I could tell you I wrote the book for some great reason. I wrote the book and I wrote it so I could give it to my kids. My whole plan was to give the book to my kids so they can see this is why dad is a loudmouth arsehole sometimes, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we went bankrupt and a publisher wanted to publish it and I needed the money. We were going to go bankrupt.
Wow.
Yeah. We lost everything. We went 2 years living in a house. I had enough. I was making enough. I was still serving in the military, but I had 2 kids and a wife. And what happened was I got posted, and my house that I own didn't sell. So for a full year, I was paying and all the bills in one spot, and feeding a family, and then paying mortgage at another posting, and paying all the bills there, waiting for the house to sell. So after a year of doing that, we let me just say there was many a night where I went to bed hungry, but my kids never did. But yeah, we wrote the book, and after the book was out, and I did public speaking. Kayla, after I finished speaking, after the end of You know, there'd be a few hundred people in the audience. I would tell people, listen, you need to talk to people. If you have PTSD, you need to talk to someone. Don't be alone. If you can't find no one to talk to me. And holy shit, everybody did. And I remember sitting on my couch one night complaining to my kid, who was probably 7 at the time, saying, man, I wish I could take all these people and put them in a group somehow or a room so they could all lean on each other and find support in each other. He said, why don't you go on Facebook and create a Facebook group? And I was like, what the hell is Facebook and what's a group? But we created PTSD Buddies in 2015. And I don't know. I love helping people. And I know what it's like. And I know you know what it's like to be in that dark place. And I hate the thought of someone being in that dark place alone. The dark place kills. So if I can help one person, I'm all for it.
Well, how are you doing now?
I am a lot better. It took me a long time. I only just recently stopped seeing a head doctor. And the reason why is my head doctor got audited by the government. So now he can no longer direct bill Veterans Affairs. I have to pay out of pocket and then send my receipt to Blue Cross. So I don't mind this going on the podcast. I tried it one time, Kayla. I paid for it. I sent the receipt to Blue Cross. It took 3 months for me to get my money back. And I think the only reason why, after 3 months, I phoned Blue Cross and lost my mind at them going on saying, I almost regret saying it. I said, I can see why veterans are killing themselves. I can see it because they have to pay out of pocket now and then wait 3 to 6 months to get money back. I said, Blue Cross, you owe me $1,500. I said, that's rent to somebody. So you know what? If I didn't have a backup plan and I didn't have my credit card, I'd probably be on the street. Thanks a lot, Blue Cross. Right? And I shit you not, 4 days later, I got my money. Yeah.
Wow.
Sometimes it takes, and I've had other veterans tell me this too. A lot of times it takes a phone call and a freak out to get what you want.
But it's a shame in this day and age with this technology. I mean, it's not the same as the paper push of the old days. The fact that you have to do all that, the fact that so many veterans, who the hell wants to deal with that? It's nothing but madness.
Well, that's the thing. Someone like you, Kayla, who what you went through, going into a building could be a trigger. That alone could be a trigger. Answering the phone could be a trigger, right? Things like that. So when someone like me or you has to go through steps, let's say phone calls are a trigger. So now first thing we have to do is phone Blue Cross. And now you're angry. So you're sitting on a waiting line for probably 20 minutes. You know, and then you start talking to somebody and then you could get disconnected. So you got to go through the process again. Or you could get someone who doesn't speak good English and that could trigger you because you're not understanding them well. Maybe you have to wear a hearing aid. And then after so long, you just get fed up and you quit. You don't care no more. I'm not going through it all again. Right?
Yep.
Jesus, bad enough phoning the cable guy and waiting online forever.
That's true. What are your triggers?
For me, driving is a trigger because the last my tour in Afghanistan, that's what I did. I drove vehicles. So driving can be a trigger, especially when people who cut you off and stuff. Balloons are a trigger because they go bang.
Oh, yeah.
I don't like balloons in my house. Loud bangs usually make my body go cold. I still deal with nightmares, but marijuana helps with nightmares. I take a marijuana oil capsule at night, and that has helped with nightmares. I think I still have them because my wife says I twitch and yell in my sleep, but I don't remember the dream. So I'll take what I can get. But I have to say my biggest trigger is if I see certain things on TV, anything to do with someone being beaten or anything with hurting a child. I don't want to get into the story, but I've seen some dead children overseas. I witnessed children killed in front of me through an IED. So anything like that still triggers me. Yeah.
I'm still learning what my triggers are. Because sometimes something happens, and then you're already in it, and it takes you a while to figure out what happened.
Yeah.
For me, being in the car a while, that drives me crazy because at that time I wanted to be working. I didn't want to be going away. You know what I mean? And then, but the biggest trigger I have. This is going to sound a little unusual. When I finally hit the street level and the police officer told me or told us to run, there were some people with me who were screaming, panic, freak out.
Yeah.
So I had somebody kind of take them to lead them ahead of me. But even to this day, when I hear somebody like whining or something, it triggers me because, I'm in that same mode of trying to get to work. And if I spend too much time with them, what am I going to look like? Am I, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's a fear thing, I guess.
Well, that's what your trigger is. A lot of times that's what a trigger is. It reminds you of the trauma day. I got one for you. I have a PTSD buddy. Her trigger is toilets. Anytime she sees a toilet, she's triggered. Why? Because she was raped in a bathroom. And that's what she stared at while she was being raped, was the toilet. So every time she sees a toilet now, she thinks about that moment she was raped. So anything could be a trigger. It depends on who you are and what you've been through.
One of the things that really bothers me, we were talking a little bit about the stigma before. When terms are overused and not quite the right meaning, when a young kid writes on their Facebook page or something, oh, I had a bad day. This guy was pulling my hair. I am so triggered. I have PTSD. You hear all that foolishness all the time. And because it's invisible, as you know, somehow it's made up. It's not real. You know what I mean? It's just an excuse for us.
Yes. Yeah. You're going to face that. I've faced that, right? You're even going to have people talk to you about their PTSD that you probably don't even think is really that triggering, right? Well, that's the thing is what's trauma to one sometimes isn't trauma to another.
The other thing I've learned, have you read the book,
right,
The Body Keeps?
Some people are bullshit, and some people do bullshit and say they have PTSD when they really don't.
Have you read the book, The Body Keeps a Score? Are you familiar with that?
No.
I was abused as a kid, 9 years old.
Wow.
And so what this book is, it's a really good book, by the way, probably worth you to reading it. It says if something happens to you, and I kind of blocked that for years, at the peak of my career in New York, I never thought about that. But the moment you have another trauma, it just brings it back to the top. And so that's what they call complex trauma.
PTSD.
Yeah, it's like, oh.
That's what I have.
Hey, look at us. We're buddies.
Yeah. When I was in grade 2, I can't remember the age. I was in grade 2. Our house caught on fire. I was almost burned alive. I was the last one out. And I can still tell that story like it was yesterday. Right? Yep. All started because of a cigarette ash that got caught down into the couch. And then the couch caught on fire. Oof. And my father made it out. As soon as my father made it out through the back door, oxygen, the fire department told us, got inside, which caused the side of the house to explode. My sister was not at home, and the only ones left were myself, my brother, and my mother. I remember my brother, we wouldn't have made it out alive if it wasn't for my brother. Shout out to my brother, Todd. He threw a TV through one window, and fire came in through the window and burned us. And then he threw a sewing machine through the next window. At that time, I guess I ran back to my bed and covered my mouth because I couldn't breathe through the smoke. He took my mother and he pitched her through the window, right? That was already broke open. Now, this is a second floor house. We're on the second floor. She landed on the ground and broke her leg. And then he jumped because he thought I was in her arms. I was not. I was still in bed. So you can imagine my dad's panic when he looked up and knew that I was still inside this burning building. My dad still talks about it because I told him, I said, Dad, you've been through some amazing trauma. What trauma did I go through? I said, after everything that I've been through, Nothing would compare to my son being in a burning building while I'm outside. I can't even imagine that. So don't tell me you've never been through trauma. I said, I don't care how much of an arsehole I was as a kid. That was panic. But I jumped out.
I was going to say, how did you get out?
I jumped out. When I still, Kayla, remember my floor, the floor, and there was carpet on the floor in my bedroom, and my feet. I was tiptoeing because my feet were burning on the floor. And I remember I left my bedroom. I went back to the stairs to try to go down the stairs because I was scared to jump at the window, and the stairs were on fire. I turned around. I went back down the hallway, and now, what am I, 8 years old at the time, maybe grade 2? Went back into my bedroom, and what it was an old house. So it was an old wooden sliding window. So there was glass on the bottom. I was scared to cut my feet. So I remember I backed up to the bedroom door and I ran across my bedroom floor and did a cannonball through the broken glass area of the window. And I landed. A good friend of my father, Mike O'Dew, caught me.
Wow.
And that was it. The only thing that didn't make it out alive was our cat. Even our dog made it out.
Wow.
Yeah. But
That's unbelievable.
I remember to this day now that after that day, I went quiet. I was a very quiet kid. I stayed quiet, never talked to many people. My parents had a cabin. I spent most of my time in the cabin by myself. And it wasn't until I joined the military that I broke out of my shell and started talking again and being who I used to be. I was even quiet in high school. And yeah, I broke out of my shell, became a loud, not obnoxious, but in the military, I was known as a bit of a joker. I was always carrying on, acting foolish, and I love making people laugh. But that, I know now, that was my depression. I dealt with depression my whole life, I believe. So people with depression like to make you laugh.
True.
Ask Robin Williams.
Yeah, ask Jim Carrey, right?
Yep. Some of the funniest people in the world are depressed. Yeah. Our brain is an amazing thing, Kayla. I know my brain's a lot smarter than I am.
Mine too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why you'll have memory loss with PTSD. Your brain is protecting itself. I don't want to remember that. Throw that away.
I can't. I have somebody. The person who was in that famous photo by Reuters. She's the one who was in the stairwell with me. I call it my memory. When we do our call once a year, we do a little where we were, that type of thing. She remembers so much. I'm not sure how much I remember the day after. A friend of mine says, "Well, Kayla, like last year, I didn't know about that. Well, I don't know. I guess I forgot about it."
Yeah, I'll tell you one. I got posted from Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, to Newfoundland, Canada, and when I got to Newfoundland, there was a man there, and he walked up to me right away. He was in the military. He said, "How you doing, Jamie?" I said, I didn't know this guy." He started talking to me for a second, and I'm just listening. And he went, and then he stopped. He said, "Dude, you don't know who I am, do you?" I was like, "I'm sorry, dude. I don't know you." And then he started telling me stories. He showed me pictures on his phone. He showed me his notebook where I wrote in my writing my name and number.
Oh my goodness.
We were in Afghanistan together, and then he showed me pictures of me and him in sleepers together. And I don't remember him at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
I call that AARP.
Yeah, my goodness.
Wow.
But that's our brains. That's PTSD. Right?
Have you ever been on Praises-In?
On what?
It's a PRAZOSIN.
I haven't myself, but I've heard of it. Yes.
You heard about it? Yeah, I just wondered if you tried it. But yeah, I am on some medications primarily just for anxiety and depression. But what a difference! What a difference! I guess it's 4 years now that I got treatment. So much better. So much better.
It's hard to find the right medication. And then you got 2 weeks of going on a medication, and then 2 weeks of weaning off it if it doesn't work, and finding the right medication is difficult.
I'm on no benzos at all. I didn't want to be on after all this stuff. Nothing addiction. I don't want to turn into Liza Minnelli or Judy Garland. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So, yeah.
No,
So,
I'm geez, I guess you call me a hippie now. I went from 25 years in the military. Now I got long hair and I use marijuana.
well, I saw those pictures. I kept looking back and forth. Like, is that him? Is that him?
Yeah, that's me. I got shoulder
Yeah.
width. Yeah. I'm like what do you call it? I'm Tom Cruise in the 4th of July movie, that Born on
Oh
4th.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry.
Um.
I still haven't seen that movie.
So,
But
are you still traveling, speaking?
not since COVID. I miss it dearly. Out of all of it, that's my favorite thing to do is get on stage. Sometimes I think I should try stand-up comedy because
I think you would be good, actually.
it's not just me telling my story. I love telling the funny parts of my story. I love making fun of myself because a lot of my PTSD, when I look back at now, I laugh at it.
Me too. Me
I mean,
too.
I laugh. My first laugh, I talk about it now, is I talk about all the medication that they put me through before I found marijuana, because I was against marijuana being in the military. But man, I have to say this to all the doctors out there. The first thing that disappeared when I started taking all your pills was my sex drive. My God. I don't have much going for me as a retired military veteran on PTSD, but to take away my sex drive, I'm almost as angry as my wife. Yeah. Because I talk to a lot of veterans too. That's the first thing that goes on this mood medication is your sex drive. No interest at all.
Let me ask you this question. How did you? Several people have asked me about writing a book,
Yep.
and I just never. How did you feel putting that down on paper?
Best thing I ever did. It was therapeutic getting it out on paper. It was almost, and I'm not talking about putting it out there for the world to read, but writing it down, getting it off your chest was therapeutic for me. Like I said, I only meant it for like family members or my kids to read it, but it was therapeutic for me. And to be honest with you, life became a little bit more easy for me once I came out of the closet, I guess, about it.
Mm-hmm.
Once I just said, look, this is me. Here's my symptoms. This is my triggers. This is who I am. Yep. It became easier. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I started off, people started tiptoeing around me a little bit, and I had to explain, listen, that's not what I wanted when I came out about this. I just wanted you to understand there's a reason why sometimes Jamie needs to go back to the bedroom and take 10 minutes.
Yep.
Right? This is
Mm-hmm.
it, right? But I do have a few things. Like in my house, we have a trigger word in my house. The word is turn up. So if I feel triggered and my son comes, hey, Dad, blah, 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 I can go, turn up. He walks away. He knows Dad's angry right now. Just back up. He needs a minute, right?
Mm-hmm.
My kids use it too. My kids, sure, they go to school, come home, could have a bad day. I've had my kid walk through the door. I go, hey, Cody, how was your day? Turn up. Oh, sorry. Yep, leave you alone. It also worked this way. I'm proud to say it's been years since I've yelled at my kids or my wife. But when I did, I remember I yelled at Cody. Cody was only 5 years old, and I seen fear in my son's eyes. That's where the trigger word first came in. I gave it to my kids. I said, if you ever feel fear from your father, you say this word, turn up. So if I was triggered and I was angry and I started yelling, my kid could say, turn up, and I would stop and I walk out. It put the power back in their hands. Now, it wasn't perfect because sometimes they fucking use it against me. Hey, how come your fucking schoolwork isn't done? Hey, turn up, Dad. Oh, no. Turn up doesn't work on school, okay? But I was open about it to my kids. I talked to my kids about it. I sat them down and I said, you got to understand, your dad has post-traumatic stress disorder. And nothing of this is your fault. Sometimes Dad is going to have bad dreams. Sometimes Dad is going to be upset and angry for no reason at all. He might even yell at you or at people in the room. I just want you to know it's not your fault. This is Dad's problem, right? Okay? And I'm honest about it. I told him, like, Dad does not like balloons. So on your birthday, I don't think we should have any balloons in this house, man. And they understand. And the more my kids understood my triggers, the more they wanted to help. They almost became like a service dog.
Ah,
I've told this story on stage many times. I was in the mall with my son. Cody was maybe 5, 6 years old. He's holding my hand. No, he wasn't holding my hand. I was triggered. We were walking through the mall. We're walking through the food court. All these people around. I think everyone is staring at me for some reason. That's my PTSD. He recognizes that I'm triggered. And I felt a hand grab my finger. I look down and Cody says, Dad, can we please go to the bathroom? I need to pee. So now I'm being tasked by my family. So it's almost like all my anxiety is gone. I don't even notice people no more. Why? Because my son needs something. Let's go. We go to the bathroom. He took me right into the stall. And I remember at the time, I thought that was weird because he never wants anyone in the stall with him. When we got in the stall, he looked at me and he said, Dad, I know you're triggered. Should we practice our breathing? And
wow.
that's when I realized right there. All right. And I even cried and hugged him. I said, he and my son are my biggest tools for beating PTSD. They recognize triggers in me before I'm able to. And if I'm too triggered to understand how to calm myself down, they know breathing exercises. They do them with me. It's
Wow.
right. And I'm not saying there go my dogs again. Every time someone drives by, give it up. I'm not saying what works for me is going to work for everyone. Right. But what I am saying is people need to go out, try different things. You'll find things that work for you. And when you find something that works for you, stick with it. We're all different creatures.
Wow, I'm just taking everything in. This is so helpful. I kept looking around, calling people. Saying, "Are you my mother? Do you have PTSD?"
Yeah.
Until I found someone. I guess I wasn't looking hard enough.
Well, there isn't a whole lot out there.
No.
I mean, it is getting better and better each day. But back in 2015, when I created PTSD Buddies, there really wasn't much at all. So that's why we created PTSD Buddies, trying to let, we'll take your little bit of information that you learned, put it with the bit of information that I learned and pass it around. And, we all learn together. We all grow together.
Exactly. I feel like I know you. Isn't that something?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we could be trouble for some people, right?
Well, Kayla, you got me as a friend on Facebook. You feel free to message me anytime. I'm always here.
Okay, that's awesome.
I really enjoy talking to you. Your story is incredible. Like, I hope you do write a book one day. If you ever decide to write a book, here's my tip. Okay. Don't sit down and try to write page 1, page 2, page 3. That doesn't work for most people. It didn't work for me. Just sit down and write whatever's on your mind at that day. When I wrote my first book, I just what I did overseas is I kept a journal. So each day I would write something down or whatever. When I got home, I took a page out of my journal and I would rewrite it in my own words. This was an idea by my therapist. So I would write all these stories. After 6 months, I had like 40 different stories of things that went down overseas. So my wife said, if you put all this together, this would be a great book. And that's what I did.
Wow. So
when you're writing this, if you feel like writing a story about something that happened at work way before 9/11, write that. If you feel like writing something that happened way after it, then you write that. Just write. And once you're done writing and it's all out, then look at it and start piecing it together.
I've actually been trying to find somebody to write a book with me. So it's not just about Kayla. It's like 2 different views. Exactly what you said, the trauma. So it's been in the back of my brain.
Yeah. So just if you enjoy sitting back and watching Netflix, what I do is I put a notebook and a pen in front of me, and just when you feel like writing, write. And and never throw nothing away. You'll always come back.
Always come back.
Yeah.
All right, Jamie.
Kayla, is there anything else we can talk about in your story?
I would just say go Yankees.
Go Yankees. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Okay, anybody but the Red Sox or Mets.
One day I'm coming to New York. Me and my wife have always wanted to go.
Nice.
So we do. We're gonna get together for a coffee.
Nice.
All right. Kayla, like I said, you message me anytime. You got a friend in me, all right?
Me too.
Thanks so much for having this chat with me. You take care now.
You're welcome. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks everyone for joining us on this episode of the PTSD Buddies podcast. Hope you enjoyed the show. And if you or someone you know is dealing with PTSD, please look for PTSD Buddies on Facebook. You can join one of our great Facebook groups and get support. You can look for us on Twitter, Instagram, or check out our PTSD Buddies YouTube channel full of hundreds of helpful videos to help you deal with PTSD. Cheers everybody. Have a great one.